I walked in on my fiancée and my best friend together in our own bed, right there in the house we shared, and it just so happened to be a Tuesday. That day is burned into my memory, not just what I saw, but all the little details. I can still recall the scent of her go-to-Thai takeout wafting up from the bag I was carrying, the echo of my boots hitting the hardwood, and that uneasy feeling in my gut that told me something wasn't right. I'd come home earlier than usual, hoping to surprise her, but in the end, I was the one who got blindsided. As I made my way upstairs, I noticed the bedroom door was slightly ajar. Before I even stepped inside, I could hear them, soft laughter, hushed voices. And then, there they were, both of them naked and wrapped up in the sheets I'd picked out, lying on the mattress Julia and I had chosen together. Matt, my so-called best friend, just froze up. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, all the color drained from his face. Julia, though, she didn't flinch. She just stared at me, cocked her head to the side, and gave me this smug little grin. "What are you going to do, James?" "Cry?" she said, almost daring me to fall apart. You'd think a moment like that would shatter a guy, but honestly, it didn't break me. The thing is, Julia had no idea that I'd already started to suspect something was off. Neither of them knew I'd been piecing things together for weeks, watching, gathering evidence, getting ready. So instead of losing it, I kept my cool. I didn't yell, didn't shed a tear. I just smiled back and said, "Thanks for making this easy." Then I turned around and walked out the door, and that's really where my story began. If any of this hits close to home, drop a 1 in the comments. I'd love to hear your story, too. Thanks for sticking with me through this mess. If you felt something reading this, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share. Someone out there probably needs to hear it. My name's James. I'm 35, and I've called Seattle home my whole life. I work as a civil engineer, and honestly, I've always been drawn to things that are solid, structures, routines, stuff you can rely on. Maybe that's why I fell so hard for Julia. She was everything I wasn't: spontaneous, magnetic, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and instantly become the center of attention. We first crossed paths at a downtown conference. She was in charge of marketing for a real estate company, and I was there to consult on some infrastructure projects. What started as a simple coffee turned into dinner dates, and before I knew it, something casual had turned into the center of my world. After 3 years together, I asked her to marry me. For me, it wasn't just about being in love, it was about feeling sure, about knowing I'd found someone I could count on. I really believed Julia was the one. Matt and I had been best friends for more than 10 years. We met back in college, played on the same intramural teams, traveled together, and built a friendship I thought was rock solid. He was the guy I called when my dad passed away, the one who stood up and toasted my mom at her retirement party. So when Julia and I got engaged, it was a no-brainer. Matt was the first person I asked to be my best man. He didn't even hesitate, just said he'd be honored. Now, looking back, I can't tell if he was just putting on a show or if he actually believed what he was saying. What I do know is that there were little red flags along the way, tiny cracks I chose to ignore because that's what you do when you trust someone. You convince yourself the story you want to believe is the truth. In the beginning, Julia and I were that couple everyone talked about, the ones who just seemed to click. We'd host game nights, take spontaneous weekend trips, and even had matching coffee mugs that read "His Engineer" and "Her Vision." People envied us. My mom once pulled me aside and told me, "You found your person," and I believed her. We made all sorts of plans for the future: a house just outside the city, 2 kids, maybe even a dog if my allergies would let me. We weren't perfect, but I thought we were building something real, something that would last. At least, that's what I believed. About 4 months before my whole world flipped upside down, Julia started hitting the gym more often. At first, it didn't seem like anything out of the ordinary. She just said she wanted to get stronger, and I was all for it. I even bought her a new pair of sneakers and kept cheering her on, telling her to go for it. She mentioned that Matt had offered to give her some workout advice since he used to do some part-time training. I didn't give it a second thought, I trusted both of them without question. But then things started to shift. Julia began coming home later than usual, always with some excuse about networking events or client dinners. Her phone, which used to be just another object in the house, suddenly started living face down on the table. She'd get these texts that made her smile, but when I asked about them, she'd get defensive, flipping it back on me and saying I was just being paranoid. "Don't you trust me?" she'd ask, and I'd always say I did. I really wanted to believe that, but deep down, something in my gut was twisting tighter every day. I could feel something was off, but I had no idea just how bad it really was. Then came another Tuesday, just a regular day, nothing special about it. I was supposed to be out at a job site until 6, but the meeting wrapped up early. On a whim, I decided to swing by that little Thai place Julia loved, the one we always went to for our anniversaries. I figured maybe we could have dinner together, catch an episode of that true crime show she was obsessed with, and just try to feel normal for a night. I remember sitting in traffic, the smell of lemongrass and basil filling up the car, and for a brief moment, I actually felt hopeful, like maybe things were just tense lately, not broken beyond repair. But as I pulled into our neighborhood a little before 5, everything changed. I spotted Matt's truck in our driveway, a black Ford with a dent in the back fender from that ski trip we took last winter. It was just sitting there, almost like a warning sign I couldn't ignore. He was supposed to be working across town that day, he'd even told me that morning he had meetings lined up all day. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I stared at his license plate, half hoping it would tell me a different story, but of course, it didn't. I ended up parking a few houses down, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I walked the rest of the way, still clutching the takeout like some kind of cruel joke, a gift for a life that didn't exist anymore. The front door was unlocked, which was odd. I slipped inside as quietly as I could, the kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl. The whole house felt strange, like the air itself had shifted. I didn't call out, I didn't want to give anything away. Instead, I just moved on instinct, relying on years of reading people, picking up on the little things that didn't fit. That's when I heard it, muffled laughter, the sound of skin on skin, the unmistakable rhythm of two people who shouldn't be together. I climbed the stairs, feeling like a ghost, every step heavier than the last. The bedroom door was half open. I pushed it the rest of the way, and there they were, Matt and Julia, my best friend and the woman I was supposed to marry, wrapped up in each other like I was nothing, right there on the bed we'd picked out together. That was the same bed where we'd talked about baby names, where she'd first told me she loved me. Matt scrambled to his feet, tripping over the sheets, his eyes wide with panic. "Tim, bro, I can explain," he stammered, looking like a guy who'd just set his own house on fire and realized he couldn't put it out. But Julia? She didn't even bother to act surprised. She just pulled the sheet up over her chest, tilted her head, and gave me that same smirk she always wore when she beat me at Scrabble or talked a salesman down on a couch, like she was always one step ahead. "What are you going to do, James?" "Cry?" she said, not really asking, just daring me to fall apart. But I didn't give her the satisfaction. I stood there, steady as a rock. My voice didn't even shake when I said, "Thanks for making this easy." I pulled out my phone, snapped a picture, and walked out, not because I was broken, but because I already had a plan in motion. They figured they'd caught me completely off guard, but the truth is, I'd been onto them for weeks. I didn't have every single detail, not the whole ugly story, but I knew enough to sense that something was festering beneath the surface. That gut instinct I kept trying to ignore. I'd stopped brushing it aside a long time ago. It all really started one night when Julia left her iPad sitting on the kitchen counter. The screen was still glowing, and she was logged into her messages. I swear, I wasn't looking to snoop, I really wasn't. But then, right in front of me, a message popped up, "Can't wait to feel you again." My heart just about stopped. I opened the conversation, hands shaking. It was from Matt. At first, their messages were just playful, nothing too wild, just inside jokes and a little harmless flirting, or so it seemed. But as I kept scrolling, the truth started to unravel, sharp and painful: late-night meetups, hotel receipts, plans to keep him in the dark, and even conversations about me, about how clueless I was. I felt sick to my stomach, but I didn't say a word to Julia. Not yet. I needed more than just a hunch. I needed evidence that no one could argue with. So I waited, kept my cool. I downloaded the entire message thread from her synced iPad and saved it to an external drive. Then I started piecing things together, lining up dates from her texts with my own calendar, checking her gym check-ins, even digging through her credit card statements. I found dinner bills for 2 on nights she swore she was working late, hotel bookings in her name, and rideshare drop-offs at Matt's place. I printed out everything: timestamps, maps, screenshots, the whole affair laid out like some kind of crime scene file. I even bought a little safe and locked it all away. At night, I'd lie there next to her, listening to her breathe, wondering how someone could pretend to love you so well. But I didn't let myself get angry, not yet. I wasn't about to hand them that kind of power. What I wanted was certainty. I wanted to be in control. So when I finally walked into that bedroom and saw them together, I didn't feel a surge of rage. What I felt was clarity. When I said, "Thanks for making this easy," I meant it. There was no sarcasm in my voice, just relief, because now I had everything I needed. No more excuses, no more twisted stories, just the truth, plain and undeniable. I didn't snap that photo out of spite, I took it to complete the file, the last piece of the puzzle. Walking out of that room wasn't me running away, it was me pulling the trigger on a plan I'd already set in motion. Let them laugh, let them think I was weak. They had no clue what was coming their way. They thought I'd fall apart, but I was never broken. I was just biding my time. That night, I didn't go crash at a buddy's place or try to drown my sorrows in a bottle. Instead, I checked into a cheap motel near the airport, paid cash, and sat on the edge of the bed with my laptop open. First thing I did was handle the money. I moved my half of our joint account into a brand new private account, just in my name. I took Julia off all my credit cards, called up customer service to flag anything suspicious, and changed every password I could think of, from Netflix to the electric bill. I wasn't just protecting myself, I was making sure she couldn't touch a thing. She wouldn't even realize what I'd done until her card started getting declined, until she tried to buy something and found out her safety net was gone. I logged into our mortgage account, scheduled a meeting with a real estate lawyer, and then shut the laptop. Step 1 was done. The next morning, before the sun even had a chance to rise, I drove back to the house. Julia wasn't there, probably still with Matt, I figured. I wandered through those quiet rooms one last time, and the place felt empty, like a theater after the show's over and everyone's gone home. On the kitchen counter, I set the engagement ring back in its velvet box, making sure it was perfectly centered. Right next to it, I left a note on a plain sheet of white paper, folded once, written in my neatest handwriting. All I wrote was, "Hope he's worth it." That was it, no drama, no begging, just the truth, sharp and simple. I grabbed my bags, locked the door behind me, and dropped my keys in the mailbox on my way out. As I drove out of the neighborhood, I started making calls. I called both our families. My mom broke down in tears, her dad started cursing, and Julia's sister just kept asking if I was really sure. I told them, I'm more sure than I've ever been in my life. I didn't know all the details, but I wanted them to hear it straight from me, not through the grapevine or some twisted version Julia might spin later. I told them the wedding was off, and the reason was simple: betrayal. But the real move I'd been holding on to was Kate, Matt's wife. She was 8 months pregnant, glowing, and honestly one of the kindest people I'd ever met. She didn't deserve any of this. I found her number in an old group chat from when we all used to hang out. I hesitated for a second, thumb hovering over her name, but then I pressed call. She picked up after 3 rings, sounding cheerful at first, until she heard my voice and realized something was wrong. "Kate, I need to talk to you. It's about Matt and Julia. There was a long pause. I explained everything, slowly and carefully, making sure she knew I wasn't trying to hurt her, but she deserved to know the truth. Then I sent her everything I had, the screenshots, the dates, the photos. I told her I was sorry, not for telling her, but for the fact that she had to go through this at all. She didn't cry or yell. She just said, "Thank you," and hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time after that, not feeling proud or like I'd won anything, just steady, like I'd finally taken back some control. The fight wasn't over, but the first shot had been fired. A couple days later, my phone rang just after lunch. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to answer. It was Kate. Her voice was calm, almost too calm, not a hint of shaking or hesitation. "Thank you, James," she said, her words steady as steel. Now I have proof. I could sense something brewing beneath her calm, like the air right before a storm hits. I didn't ask what she planned to do, I didn't need to. She wasn't calling to vent or cry, she called because, out of everyone, Matt had underestimated her the most, and she was already way ahead of him. Before she hung up, she told me, "Don't feel bad about this. I'd rather know the truth now than keep living a lie." And then she was gone. That weekend, Kate had her baby shower. It was supposed to be this sweet, pastel-colored celebration, full of hope and excitement, but Kate had something else in mind. She waited until the party was in full swing, the room packed with friends and family, decorations glowing in the afternoon light. Matt walked in, grinning like the proud dad-to-be, carrying a box of tiny baby booties, playing the part of the perfect husband. Kate walked right up to him, smiling like nothing was wrong, holding a glass of bright red fruit punch. "Hey, babe," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I've got a surprise for you too." Then, with perfect aim, she dumped the whole drink over his head. The room went silent, everyone gasping, but that wasn't even the best part. The real showstopper came when Kate pulled out her phone, tapped on a voice memo, and let it play for the whole room. You could have heard a pin drop, everyone just stood there, listening to Julia's voice echo out of the speaker. "God, I can't believe he still has no idea. I feel bad sometimes, but not bad enough to stop." Then Kate played another recording, this time Matt's voice. "We'll just wait until the baby's born, then I'll tell her I'm not happy. James will never see it coming either." The whispers started rippling through the crowd, people glancing at each other, jaws dropping. But Kate wasn't done. She flipped her phone around and started scrolling through messages, showing off photos and screenshots she'd printed out and stuck onto a giant poster board, like some twisted science fair project from hell. "This," she said, her voice trembling but strong, "is what betrayal looks like, in case anyone here forgot what a coward does behind closed doors." She didn't break down, didn't raise her voice. She just walked out, head held high, while Matt stood there, dripping with punch, completely stunned and exposed for everyone to see. By Monday, Matt's life had pretty much imploded. He was kicked out of their apartment, blocked on every platform, and even lost his job at the firm. Turns out, Kate's cousin worked in HR, and they don't take kindly to guys who humiliate their pregnant wives in public, especially with receipts to back it up. Someone at the baby shower had filmed the whole thing and posted it to a local Facebook group, and the video blew up. The comments poured in, people weren't just shocked, they were cheering Kate on. Overnight, Matt went from being the proud dad-to-be to the most despised guy in the neighborhood. He tried to reach out to me after that, left a voicemail saying we needed to talk. I didn't bother calling back. There was nothing left to say. He and Julia started this fire, I just handed them the matches. Julia's fall from grace took a little longer, but it was just as harsh. She worked in luxury real estate, where your reputation is everything. It's not just about numbers, it's about trust, about how people see you, and Julia had always been good at that, until now. Her biggest client at the time was a wealthy couple looking to move from out of state. She'd been bragging for weeks about how this one deal could pay her bills for a year. What she didn't realize was that the couple's close friend was my cousin Victor, and I'd already sent him the whole story, screenshots, timelines, voice recordings, the works. Victor didn't have to make anything up, he just had to plant a little doubt. Are you sure you want to trust someone like that with a multi-million-dollar deal? That was all it took. The next day, Julia got an email from the clients saying they were going in a different direction. She tried to call them, but they didn't pick up. Just silence, the kind that makes excuses pointless. Word started spreading, quietly at first, agents whispering in the hallways, co-workers exchanging glances. But soon it got louder. By the end of the week, Julia was called into her broker's office. They told her they weren't firing her, but they couldn't ignore the optics. Effective immediately, she was on probation, no new listings, no big clients, and all her commissions frozen until further notice. Julia tried to spin it, blamed the market, said it was all office politics, but in a business built on image, she was radioactive. Clients didn't want their names tied to scandal, and her colleagues didn't want to be anywhere near her. A few days later, she showed up at the place I was staying. I saw her through the peephole, her hair a mess, eyes red and puffy, wearing one of my old hoodies like it might make me feel sorry for her. I opened the door just a crack, didn't let her in. She jumped right in, voice shaky. I made a mistake, she sobbed. You don't have to ruin my life over it. I'd seen that act before, and it didn't move me. You think I wanted any of this? I asked her. You think this is fun for me? For a second, she dropped the tears and her voice turned sharp. You're loving this, aren't you? Just admit it. You're getting off on punishing me, Julia snapped, her voice sharp and bitter. I didn't even blink. You did this to yourself the second you made me the fool in my own house, I told her, my voice steady. All I did was let people see the real you. Her face twisted up, caught somewhere between guilt and anger. I loved you, she whispered, almost like she was trying to convince herself. I shook my head. If you really loved me, you would have fought for us. You wouldn't have crawled into bed with my best friend. She didn't have a comeback for that, just tears. She turned and walked away, just like I had that day in the bedroom, only now she was the one with nothing left to say. I thought I'd already hit rock bottom, but betrayals got layers, and some of them cut deeper than you'd ever expect. The final twist of the knife came from Julia's sister, Camille. She called me out of the blue one afternoon, her voice shaky, like she was still debating whether she should even be telling me this. I didn't want to get involved, she started, but after everything that's come out, I can't keep this to myself anymore. I braced myself, because nobody starts a conversation like that unless they're about to drop a bomb, and sure enough, she did. Turns out, Julia had been scheming way beyond just cheating. According to Camille, she and Matt had been talking about leaving Seattle for good, starting over somewhere new, where nobody knew them, no one to judge, no fallout to dodge. And they weren't planning to do it with their own money. They were going to use mine. For months, Julia had been quietly messing with our finances. She talked me into opening a future goals account, a joint savings fund for a house, or so I thought. I kept putting money in, thinking we were building something together. She barely contributed, but I didn't question it. Camille told me Julia had bragged during a wine-fueled rant that the plan was simple: let me keep saving, keep working, keep playing the dependable fool, and then, when the time was right, they'd drain the account, disappear to Costa Rica, and live it up while pretending their love just happened. She said you'd never fight back, Camille admitted, that you'd just fade away, like you always do when things get tough. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not out of anger, but pure disbelief. They hadn't just betrayed me emotionally and physically, they were planning to rob me blind, using the money I'd worked for, the future I thought we were building together, to bankroll their fantasy. I logged into the account while Camille was still on the line. The balance was half what it should have been. There were recent transfers to Julia's personal account, thousands gone. But the rest? I'd already moved it into a new private account the day after I left. She hadn't gotten it all, and now she never would. Camille apologized again, said she felt sick keeping it to herself, and admitted she wasn't even sure if Julia had told Matt the whole plan. He probably thinks she's just scared and heartbroken, Camille said, but she's been playing both of you this whole time. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and I actually laughed, not because any of it was funny, but because it was just so damn crazy. They didn't just cheat, they plotted, lied, stole, and all the while, they thought I was just the clueless guy holding the door open for them. What they never realized was that I'd already slammed that door shut behind them. It was almost midnight when Matt finally decided to confront me. I was at a bar downtown with a couple of old friends, just trying to breathe for the first time in weeks. The music was low, the lights were warm, and for a few precious minutes, I actually felt like myself again. Then I saw him, Matt, storming through the crowd, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched so tight I thought he might break his own teeth. He marched right up to me, no hesitation, no shame, just pure fury. "You happy now?" he spat. "You ruined my life, my marriage, my job, everything." I just looked at him, calm as ever, took a sip of my drink, and didn't budge. "You did that to yourself," I told him, my voice calm and even. "All I did was let the truth drown out your lies." Matt let out this bitter, loud laugh, trying to get everyone's attention. "You smug son of a," he started, then shoved me hard. My glass tipped over, crashed to the floor, and shattered, kind of like the illusion he'd been living in all this time. People around us started to turn and stare. I stood up, slow and steady, not because I was scared, but because I wasn't about to give him the fight he was itching for. "Go home, Matt," I said quietly. "Whatever's left of your dignity might still be waiting for you there." But he couldn't stop himself. He swung at me, wild and sloppy, clearly drunk and desperate. I saw it coming a mile away. One punch, that's all it took. My fist landed square on his jaw, not out of anger, but because sometimes you have to teach a lesson the hard way. He stumbled back and hit the floor, a heap of broken pride. The whole bar went silent for a second, then security showed up, grabbing him by the arms as he started yelling about how I'd set him up, how I was the bad guy. Nobody paid him any mind. The bouncers had seen everything, one of them even patted me on the shoulder and said, he had that coming. They dragged Matt out into the night, still shouting, unraveling right there in front of everyone. I sat back down, my heartbeat steady, my hands clean. That wasn't about revenge, it was just the way things had to go. Matt wanted to blame me for the mess he'd made of his life, but the truth was, I wasn't his enemy. The real fight was with the guy staring back at him in the mirror. And for the first time, he couldn't lie to himself anymore. Once the dust settled, after all the chaos, the betrayals, and the confessions faded into background noise, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. Not the kind that comes from pretending nothing happened, but the kind that grows out of surviving the worst and coming out the other side. People kept asking me how I managed to stay so calm, how I didn't lose it when everything I trusted fell apart. I tell them this: some men don't break, we get sharper. We go quiet, not because we're weak, but because we're getting ready. And when we come back, we're not the same. We come back forged, stronger, clearer, and, in my case, finally free. A few weeks later, I met someone new. Her name's Nora. We literally bumped into each other at a bookstore, both reaching for the same Murakami novel. She laughed, I apologized, and we ended up grabbing coffee. There was nothing dramatic or over the top about it, just something honest and simple. No games, no pretending, just two people showing up as themselves, not as some version they thought the other wanted. I told her everything early on, about Julia, about Matt, about how betrayal changes the way you see the world. She didn't flinch. She just nodded and said, we all carry scars. Some of us just wear them louder. There was something about the way she looked at me, not as someone broken, not as a victim, but as a man who chose to walk away with his head up. I didn't realize how much I needed that until she gave it to me, without even trying, these days, I don't find myself looking over my shoulder so much. I don't second-guess every laugh, every late-night text, or every quiet moment. I trust again, not blindly, but with intention. The biggest change is that I finally trust myself, my gut, my instincts, that small voice inside that tried to warn me months ago. Back then, I wasn't ready to listen, but now I hear it loud and clear. That voice isn't just a warning bell anymore, it's my compass, guiding me toward a life that actually belongs to me. I'm not sharing it with people who pretend to be loyal, or building it on shaky ground that's bound to crumble. This time, it's real, it's honest, and it's something I've earned. I'll always remember what happened, but I refuse to let it define who I am. What they tried to bury me under, I used as the foundation to rebuild. And now, I know exactly what it takes to make something last. Let me ask you something: when someone betrays you, do you believe in forgiveness, or do you believe in consequences? Do you give them another shot, hoping they'll change, or do you close the door and walk away for good? I'm not talking about the easy kind of forgiveness, the kind you hand out just to keep the peace. I mean the kind of betrayal that cuts deep, the kind that changes you. What do you do then? I want to hear your story. Have you ever had someone you trusted break something that couldn't be fixed? How did you handle it? Did you keep quiet, or did you stand up for yourself in your own way? Drop your story in the comments. Let's talk, not just about the pain, but about what comes after, because that's where the real power is. That's where the change happens. They thought I'd fall apart, that I'd beg, cry, or carry their shame on my shoulders. But they forgot something: some men don't break, we get sharper. We walk through the fire, and we come out the other side forged into something stronger than anger. We come out focused, determined, and a whole lot wiser. I didn't lose anything when they walked out of my life, all I did was make space for something better, something real. Betrayal doesn't get to define you, how you respond does. It's easy to let bitterness take over, to replay the hurt until it becomes your whole story. But that's not strength. That's just standing still. Real strength is in the quiet moments, in the choice to keep moving forward without needing to prove anything to anyone. It's in walking away and not looking back. It's in choosing to grow, not for their sake, but for your own peace. At the end of the day, you get to decide if you stay stuck in the ruins or if you build something new on top of them. And let me tell you, there's nothing better than realizing you didn't just survive, you leveled up. Don't waste your energy chasing closure from people who never deserved a place in your heart to begin with. You're not here to stay broken, you're here to rise. Walk away like a warrior, rise like a legend. If you've made it this far, you're part of my story now, and maybe it's time to start writing your own ending. One where you don't just heal, but you own the fire that tried to burn you down.